You are tired of watching endless, self-repeating movie lists about disturbing films like Human Centipede, a Serbian film, or Martyrs? Then this video found you at the right time. And as I send myself by making lists with great but already popular titles before, today, on Top 2 Day, it's all about 10 disturbing movies you've probably never even heard of. We will talk about documentaries, mockumentaries, experimental movies, and other amazing films you can watch with all your family on these winter nights. If you know more disturbing movies no one has seen before, let me know in the comments below. So, let's start from number 10. Number 10, The Sadness, 2021. Okay, so I promised you hidden and underrated disturbing movies. And yeah, I know what you're thinking. The Sadness? What the fuck? Everyone knows this one. But hear me out. Despite how loud this film feels, it's still way more niche than people think. A lot of casual horror fans have never seen it, or even heard about it. The roots of The Sadness trace back to Crossed, Garth Ennis's notorious comic series. And if you think The Sadness is extreme, Crossed operates on an entirely different level. In the Crossed universe, the world doesn't face a typical zombie apocalypse. The infected don't lose intelligence or mobility. Instead, they lose all moral restraint. They remain fully conscious, fully aware, driven by their worst impulses. Violence, cruelty, and humiliation become their only motivation. What makes it truly disturbing is that these aren't mindless monsters. They're people who know exactly what they're doing and enjoy it. A very similar idea is explored in The Sadness, taking that concept and pushing it into a modern cinematic form. The film shows a society collapsing almost instantly when a virus removes all inhibition, turning ordinary people into sadistic predators. The plot of the film is simple. It follows Jim, an ordinary man, and his girlfriend as a sudden apocalypse erupts, separating them in different parts of the city. Determined to reunite, Jim does everything he can to fight his way through the chaos and save the woman he loves. The film features several intense set pieces, including a particularly brutal sequence in the subway, and is absolutely not recommended for sensitive viewers. If you're tired of safe horror, go and watch The Sadness. If you've already seen it, go check out the comic book Crossed. It's a must-read if you enjoy dark worlds and zombies taken to absolute extremes. And if you've done both, no problem. Keep watching, because we're moving on to number 9. Kill List, 2011. Kill List pretends to be a gritty crime thriller, and that's the first lie it tells you. The film follows Jay, a former soldier turned hitman, who takes one last job with his partner to fix his failing marriage and financial problems. At first, everything feels grounded and almost mundane. Arguments at home, tense conversations, short bursts of violence that feel uncomfortably real. And that violence matters. The brutality in Kill List isn't stylized or cinematic. It's fast, ugly, and shockingly realistic. When someone is hurt, it doesn't feel like a movie moment. It feels like something you weren't meant to see. As the job continues, the targets become stranger. Their reactions make no sense. Some seem relieved to die. Others think they're killers. Small details start piling up, hinting that there's something deeply wrong beneath the surface. By the time the film shows its true face, it's already too late. The final act transforms the story into pure nightmare, exposing the film's core idea. Violence isn't chaos, it's a system. And once you're inside it, escape is an illusion. Number 8. Eden Lake. Before we go any further, I should say this. This is the last relatively well-known film on this list. Eden Lake looks like a simple survival thriller, but in reality, Eden Lake is one of the most ruthless British horror films of the 2000s. A young couple, Ginny and Steve, travel to a remote countryside lake for a quiet weekend away from the city. What starts as a peaceful trip quickly becomes uncomfortable when they encounter a group of local teenagers who refuse to leave them alone. At first, the conflict feels minor. Loud music, rude behavior, small acts of intimidation. The kind of situation where you expect things to cool down if everyone just walks away. But instead of fading, the hostility escalates. The teenagers stop acting like kids and reveal something far more disturbing. A complete lack of empathy, fueled by boredom, peer pressure, and the certainty that no one will stop them. As Ginny and Steve try to escape, every attempt at finding help fails. The deeper they run into the countryside, the clearer it becomes that this isn't just about survival, it's about control. The violence is raw, sudden, and painfully realistic, making every moment feel unpredictable. Many viewers hate the end, and I am as well, but that is exactly why this film works. Eden Lake ends on a note of absolute cruelty, leaving the viewer with the unsettling realization that monsters don't grow in the woods, they grow at home, under the watchful care of monsters just like them. Number 7. Possum. If Eden Lake was cruel, Possum is something else entirely. This isn't a horror film in the traditional sense. There are no jump scares, no fast pacing, no clear explanations. Sorry, I have to mention this. There is actually one very effective jump scare at the end of the movie. It's not meant to be a jump scare, but because the film never uses them before, it works perfectly. All right, let's get back to the plot. The story follows Philip, a deeply withdrawn man who returns to his childhood home after his life collapses. He carries with him a strange, grotesque puppet called Possum, a spider-like creature with a human face. Philip clearly hates it, fears it, yet can't bring himself to get rid of it. From the very beginning, the film feels wrong. Long silences, empty spaces, decaying buildings, conversations that never quite make sense. Nothing is explained outright, and the movie refuses to guide the viewer or offer reassurance. As Philip wanders through bleak landscapes and revisits his past, it becomes clear that Possum isn't about the puppet itself. It's about trauma, buried, festering, and inescapable. The horror comes from implication rather than action, from what's suggested rather than what's shown. There is a recurring sense of guilt, abuse, and something unspeakable that happened long ago. The film circles these ideas slowly, forcing the viewer to sit with them. Every frame feels heavy, every sound feels deliberate. When the truth finally emerges, it's not shocking in a conventional way, it's crushing. Possum doesn't aim to scare you for a moment, it aims to leave a stain, and once it's over, the silence feels louder than anything that came before it. This is not a film you watch for fun, it's a film you endure. Number 6. Man Bites Dog. This is where the list stops being horror in the usual sense and becomes something far more disturbing. Man Bites Dog is presented as a mockumentary, following a charming, intelligent serial killer named Ben, as a documentary crew records his daily life. At first, the tone is darkly comedic. Ben is talkative, witty, even likable. He explains his methods, his philosophy, his routines, as if he were the protagonist of a quirky indie film. And that's the danger. As the film goes on, the murders become more frequent, more casual, and more brutal. The camera doesn't look away. There's no dramatic music, no moral framing, no cinematic distance. The violence is treated as mundane, almost boring, and that's exactly what makes it horrifying. The real horror, however, isn't Ben, it's the film crew. They start as observers, claiming neutrality. Then they begin to help, holding equipment, blocking doors, even participating. The line between documenting evil and enabling it completely disappears, forcing the viewer to question their own role as a spectator. Man Bites Dog isn't trying to scare you with suspense or monsters. It's attacking the idea of consumption itself, our fascination with violence, our comfort with watching suffering as entertainment. By the end, the joke is long gone. What remains is an ugly, nihilistic portrait of cruelty, complicity, and moral collapse. Number 5. Angst. I've already talked about this film in much more detail in my video about real-life killers portrayed in cinema, so I won't break it down scene by scene here. But it absolutely belongs on this list. Angst is loosely based on the real Austrian serial killer Werner Kniesek, and the film makes that very clear in its intent. This isn't a stylized or romanticized portrayal. There's no mystery, no cat-and-mouse game, no attempt to make the killer fascinating or clever. The story follows a recently released criminal who immediately relapses into violence. The film stays locked inside his head, forcing the audience to experience events from his perspective, his impulses, his paranoia, his spiraling loss of control. There's no distance, no relief, and no moral framing to soften what you're watching. The camera work is absolutely phenomenal. Aggressive, invasive, constantly moving in unnatural ways. Long tracking shots, distorted angles, sudden shifts in perspective. The camera doesn't observe the killer, it clings to him. It feels obsessive, suffocating, and deeply unsettling. This visual style makes the film feel less like a movie and more like being trapped inside a violent mind. Combined with the cold narration and relentless pacing, it creates an experience that's almost physically uncomfortable to sit through. This film is absolutely unique, and it still holds up incredibly well despite being made in 1983. Trust me, you'll never find anything similar when it comes to serial killers. Highly recommended. Number 4. Nothing Bad Can Happen. Despite how it looks, this is not a Lars von Trier film, but it absolutely carries the same vibe. Directed by Katrin Gebbe and released in 2013, it shares the same cold realism, emotional cruelty, and willingness to push the viewer to their limit. The story follows Michael, a deeply religious and extremely kind young man who believes in helping others no matter the cost. When he meets a troubled family, he allows them into his life, convinced that patience, faith, and goodness will eventually change them. Instead, they exploit him. What starts as awkward tension slowly turns into manipulation, control, and escalating abuse. Michael doesn't fight back. He doesn't escape. He believes enduring suffering is part of his spiritual duty, and that belief becomes his downfall. The film shows, step by step, how kindness can be weaponized and how evil doesn't always arrive violently. Sometimes it arrives quietly, pretending to need help. The camera stays close and unflinching, forcing the audience to witness the process rather than cutting away. There's no dramatic payoff, no lesson spelled out, just the horrifying realization of how far things can go when no one intervenes. If you're drawn to films that challenge you emotionally, that feel uncomfortable in the same way von Trier's work does, Nothing Bad Can Happen is essential viewing. Number 3. Calvaire. This is where the list fully descends into madness. Calvaire starts like a familiar nightmare setup. A traveling singer's van breaks down in the middle of nowhere. No signal, no help. He ends up in a remote rural village and is offered a place to stay by a quiet, lonely innkeeper. At first, it feels like social awkwardness. Strange pauses, long stares, conversations that don't quite make sense. Uncomfortable, but survivable. Then the film slowly reveals the truth. The innkeeper isn't just lonely, he's broken. Still trapped in grief over his dead wife, he begins projecting her identity onto the singer. What starts as discomfort turns into something far worse. The singer is no longer treated as a person, but as a replacement, a stand-in. Someone who must become who they want him to be. And it doesn't stop with one man. The entire village exists outside normal reality. The locals are emotionally stunted, violent in strange ways, and completely detached from moral logic. They don't see cruelty as cruelty, only as routine, as tradition. What makes Calvaire truly disturbing is that there's no clear villain. There's no mastermind, just people consumed by grief, obsession, and isolation, enforcing their delusions onto someone who never consented to play this role. The film becomes a nightmarish exploration of identity being erased. Gender, autonomy, and individuality are stripped away piece by piece. Escape feels impossible, not because of locked doors, but because reason itself no longer exists in this place. Calvaire doesn't explain itself. It traps you inside its logic and dares you to survive it. By the time it ends, it feels less like a movie and more like a psychological breakdown you just witnessed firsthand. Number 2. Imprint 2006. This is one of the most disturbing films Takashi Miike has ever made. And that says a lot. Imprint was so extreme that it was never broadcast on American television, despite being produced for a major network. The story takes place in the 19th century and follows an American journalist searching for a woman he once loved in a grim, nightmarish brothel. There, he meets a severely deformed woman forced to work there, who begins telling him a series of increasingly horrific stories about abuse, torture, jealousy, and survival. As the film progresses, it becomes clear that these stories are not just random confessions. They are fragments of a much darker truth, slowly leading the journalist towards something deeply personal and deeply horrifying. The film is extremely niche and very theatrical. Billy Drago, who plays the journalist, delivers a performance that feels closer to stage acting than naturalistic cinema. His exaggerated expressions and intense delivery may not work for everyone, and some viewers might find it off-putting. But despite that, Imprint is a powerful and punishing film. Takashi Miike doesn't rely on cheap scares. Instead, he confronts the viewer with graphic imagery, psychological cruelty, and taboo subject matter without offering relief or justification. This isn't a film designed to entertain. It's designed to shock, unsettle, and linger in your mind long after it's over. So, before we get to number 1, I want to leave you with 2 bonus films. They're not as widely discussed, but they're absolutely worth your attention. More importantly, these 2 films look at the same terrifying real-world situation, something that can happen to completely ordinary families from 2 opposite perspectives. One focuses on what happens when emotional distance and neglect slowly create a monster. The other asks a far more uncomfortable question. What if the parents did everything right, and it still wasn't enough? Together, they form a disturbing conversation about responsibility, guilt, and the limits of parental control. Benny's Video, 1992. This film follows a teenage boy named Benny, who lives a comfortable, wealthy life with emotionally distant parents. His world is built around technology: video cameras, TV screens, recorded images. Real human connection is almost completely absent. Obsessed with violent footage he keeps replaying on tape, Benny invites a girl his age to his house. What begins as an awkward, almost innocent interaction suddenly turns horrific. Benny kills her and records the entire act on video. When his parents discover what he's done, the film takes its most disturbing turn. Instead of calling the police, they focus on protecting their status, their routine, their comfort, treating the murder not as a moral catastrophe, but as a problem to be quietly managed and erased. The true horror of Benny's Video isn't just the crime itself, it's the emotional emptiness surrounding it. No panic, no real remorse, just calm, calculated damage control. The film forces an uncomfortable question. Was Benny shaped into this by neglect and emotional distance, or did his parents reveal who they truly are by how easily they covered it up? It's a movie that doesn't shock you in the moment. It haunts you afterward, when you realize how realistic it feels. On the other hand, we have a film that approaches the same nightmare from the opposite angle. We Need to Talk About Kevin tells the story of a mother raising a child who seems disturbingly different from the very beginning. Kevin is intelligent, calculating, and emotionally cold. From early childhood, he resists affection, manipulates those around him, and shows signs of cruelty that can't be easily explained. As Kevin grows older, his behavior escalates. Not suddenly, but deliberately. The film is framed around the aftermath of a horrific act, as the mother looks back on his upbringing, desperately searching for a moment where things could have gone differently. Unlike Benny's Video, this film doesn't suggest simple neglect. The parents are present, they try, they love, and yet none of it seems to reach Kevin. The horror here lies in that uncertainty. Was Kevin shaped by his environment, or was something already broken from the start? The film refuses to answer, forcing the viewer to confront the uncomfortable idea that sometimes there is no clear cause, no lesson, and no one to fully blame. Number 1. Orozco the Embalmer. At number 1, we have a truly disturbing and unsettling film. If you've been subscribed to the channel for a while and have watched my previous videos, you already know this. The scariest films are not fiction. They are movies made about real events and real people. Whether it's The Cove, exposing mass dolphin slaughter, or The Act of Killing, where executioners calmly reenact their crimes, these films haunt you in a different way. You can't shake them off, because you know they actually happened. And today's film is even worse. Not better, not deeper in meaning, just scarier and way more unsettling. Orozco the Embalmer is not a horror movie and not a thriller. It's a documentary that follows Froilan Orozco, a real embalmer working in one of the most violent and dangerous regions of Colombia, at a time when death was part of everyday life. Unfortunately, or perhaps mercifully, I can't show the disturbing images this film contains. The film shows real victims of murders, accidents, and cartel violence. The bodies are often in horrific condition, and Orozco's job is to restore them just enough so families can say goodbye. That is the entire film. No narration, no reflection, just the work. For most people, this is a 1-minute movie. They will turn it off almost immediately. For those who can endure it, be careful. By the end, it becomes physically uncomfortable to watch because the film strips humanity down to something terrifyingly simple. Without consciousness, memory, or soul, we are just flesh. And here's the part that truly completes this film. Froilan Orozco died not long after the documentary was made. A man who spent his entire life surrounded by corpses eventually became one himself. Just a quiet reminder that death consumes anyone equally, even those who spend their lives preparing others for it. Watch at your own risk. I warned you. So that's it for today. If you're still watching at this point, know this. You're a hero of this channel and a true connoisseur of the dark arts of cinema. If you know even more rare or disturbing films, please share them in the comments. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.